Gaming is everywhere, but not everything is a game. Gaming is fun. It's competitive, not only for gamers, but also for marketers who strive to get the game in as many hands as possible. Gaming brands have been taking their marketing very seriously, and more so with the data-led revolution. Every single growth metric, every single use case, and every single brand decision is acquired knowledge born out of insights, but doing this is easier said than done. To tell you about how it's done, we go back to hear two VPs of marketing of renowned gaming companies. Welcome to episode 53 of the State of Retention Marketing podcast. I'm your host, Ankur. In this crossover episode, we like to call it Common Threads. We blend two episodes to deep dive into the shared themes and common problems that were tackled by Bharat Bhatia from Junglee Games and Nishant Jaiswal from Zupee. I hope you enjoy the podcast. We must first ask ourselves why marketers are drawn to gaming and what makes gaming such an exciting place to be in.
In the back of my mind, I always wanted to go back to gaming because I suddenly found that gaming as a space is so exciting. And real money gaming per se, because you have the game, which is your product. You also have finance, and which is transactions. And you also have core engagement, core retention, because that is how good gaming companies make money. So then I realized maybe Junglee is the right step in the career. I think I called you also when I was making that decision. So and now it's been 5 years, all about to complete 5 years in May. So it's been a good journey. Thankfully, things have fallen into place. When I look back, all the decisions have come out well. Yeah, and I hope this continues.
What appealed to me was the addressable TAM, because some of the games that we were building at that point in time had a considerable TAM, and if you kind of swing it with skill-based gaming or RMG, it kind of gave us a clear view that that's a company that's
huge and available. And is there, let's say, a metric in India that you now are able to think about that this is 2% of your monthly income you're spending on this stuff? Is that so evident or clear?
It's no, I think it'll, because India is a billion plus audience, and it's still evolving in terms of whether it is internet penetration, mobile device, and gaming itself is evolving so rapidly. So I think a broad statement like that
too early.
Way too early.
And in some sense, it's also gotten a whole bunch of competition in because it's attractive as a space. So from your lens at Zupee now, and in terms of the kind of categories you play or the segments you play in, it could be product segment or the market or audience segment. And you said Bharat as a definition of the TAM. It's a fairly broad definition. So would you be in a position to articulate slightly sharper, or how do you play in the competitive landscape?
So largely, if I were to look at gaming or real money gaming, there is a clear division between fantasy. Then there are card games, which could include Rummy or other variants. And then there is the casual board game space.
Okay.
Now, when I said Bharat audience, the casual board game space, typically games like Ludo and Snakes and Ladders, and these are games which are very native to Indian culture and even certain global markets as well. And I think with those nuances that there is an addressable TAM, and if you are there are existing gamers out there which you can appeal to at the basis of nostalgia, of easy onboarding. These are certain, and obviously it's for Ludo. Technically, I think out of 100 people, 99 would have played it at certain point in time or would know. So we do enjoy a very good onboarding journey as compared to, let's say, my previous stint at poker. If you ask 100 people, maybe 5 or less than 5 would have actually played poker or
still complicated
poker player. So it's a very niche market from where Ludo appeared to be much
applying to that being like the top tier of the spectrum, perhaps the elite audience, and this is like way more mainstream. Another reason why gaming excites marketers is data and how they drive decisions. Behind every punch, every card draw, and every move, numbers reveal how every player interacts with the game and more. What role does it play, and why do marketers obsess over data? Here's why.
The goal was, how do we mature as a company? How do we mature our processes as a company? How do we mature how we are collecting that information and deriving insights? So we knew, I think now I'll be able to tell you better. We knew we knew what is going down in terms of metrics. So is my revenue going down? So if revenue is going down, are people playing less? Are people playing for less money, etc.? So those basics were sorted, that we knew what was going down. The maturity had to come in to say that why is this going down? If there is a drop in a certain cohort, then why is that cohort going down? I think that is the journey that we've tried to traverse from 2018 to now, is that a lot of people in the company now have started asking a question of why is certain things going down. So for people who come, so for people who have 10 years of experience and still come to Junglee, they find it very hard to answer that question, is why is certain, because I think in a lot of companies what happens is that people stop at what is going down, and then you do a discount and then you do something, etc., and some things work and some things don't. But then understanding the why is, I think, still a work in progress, because you don't get the right answer all the time, and you sometimes end up getting the right answer. So I think that is where the maturity now is in terms of understanding why it is going down.
Basically, we were actually looking for insights to move the needle. So this was a deliberate, let's say, trying to find out insight that can be leveraged rather than, because just by sending push notifications or communicating at large won't move the needle unless you've understood the gamer's behavior. And if at large data can throw that insight that, okay, this is a larger prediction which is possible, that if by behavior 5 games are played within a certain time span, there is a higher probability. So it's largely a number base.
So I'm trying to now draw back from the previous lenses that you applied in terms of what does this mean from an audience persona lens? Did this say something to you in terms of the channel that you were using? Were search channels getting you more search users than others? And then how did that change your acquisition strategy or the kind of communication you're doing from a creative side?
Such insights are largely applicable for most of the users because this largely captures the intent.
Right.
From an acquisition perspective, if you're looking at only net new users, largely we're looking at the cost that we are getting the user and the expected revenue that this user will give to me in 30 days or 365. Or
that's factoring the fact that this guy has played 5 games in a day. So, the cohort of users which are behaving in the so-called ideal fashion, they must have come from a set of sources. I don't know if there is a way to map specifically which sources are giving you high quality users. So the part I was trying to zoom in was in terms of the LTV to CAC. Now, of course, there's this cutoff point that below this doesn't make sense. But within that ecosystem, what qualifies, also you have an optimization method and sort of framework. And that's what I was trying to double click on, that, okay, if I were to build my funnel using only the channels which are giving me high quality users, these 100 channels have to go off because they're not giving me the M1 of whatever level.
So what we leverage in order to figure out higher revenue or high yielding users is the goal of the campaign. So in today's time, one goal could be getting a depositing user.
Sure.
But then there are ROAS and TROAS campaigns that by design give you higher revenue yielding users.
Sure.
And for that, maybe the cost is 20% higher of acquiring via those campaigns. But the LTV to CAC would be greater than 1, or as opposed to a nascent depositing user campaign.
Understood. And when you said that there are AI and ML mechanisms now to optimize advertising with a conversion goal that could be set differently compared to what a traditional Google or Facebook system does, and there are more publishers adopting to that kind of an outcome-based approach, is this where we're saying that, okay, I'm going to look at my M1 ROAS as a metric to optimize, and the system will do a bit of intelligent work to make that happen?
So Google and Facebook had always leveraged AI and ML to a certain extent. So it's not like they don't have the capability, they were the masters.
Of course, they're the... And you want to find a ways to stay outside of that ecosystem as well, right?
What programmatic has evolved to is that at an earlier time, it was largely based on bidding. So whatever remnant inventory or inventory that was not being tapped into was we were able to real-time buy through exchanges, through SSPs and DSPs. What has changed is that today, now it is not just buying an inventory, it is also from answering where and when and to who. So what this does is that the AI and ML is actually tracking a user at multiple platform level, and the ML knowledge is feeding into, so millions of sort of data points are flowing into within milliseconds, and that's what the AI is kind of calibrating whether the impression is to be thrown at a user level. So that's what has changed, and that's what results in higher success today, as opposed to a bidding based buying maybe 3-4 years back before the AI ML leveraged by program.
How does one turn data into intelligence, intelligence into knowledge, and knowledge into wisdom? In this segment, our guests jump into the process of using data to define North Star metrics, set milestones, slice and dice cohorts, fix marketing funnels, and roll out pinpointed campaigns.
From a data perspective, again, we had alerts, but now we had, let's say, 10 alerts coming every 4 hours. Now we probably have 70, 80 alerts coming every 4 hours, which means every cohort, there is an alert for every cohort. So by cohort, I mean is we divide people into very basics would be lifetime revenue. But then you'd also want to see the velocity of the revenue, which is revenue in the last 30 days, revenue in the last 90 days. So there are certain cohorts for that. What we also see is the age of people in the system, which is if someone is a 2-year-old player with us or a 5-year-old player with us, how are they behaving differently? You'll also look at platform level data. So you'll also look at game level data, game variant level data. So there are multiple cohorts in which we've segmented the single customer. Now the challenge is, because you have multiple cohorts, is one customer who's a power user coming in seven cohorts and getting 7 notifications in a day. So that is the challenge. That is the beauty of making multiple cohorts, is that you go very granular. But the challenge is, how do you not spam the user? And so that's where we are working on a lot of cadence, building mechanisms, a lot of processes around who to send, what to send, when to send, if to send at all or not. I think that's a bigger concern. I think all companies have gone through that process where they've realized that, okay, maybe sending 10 notifications a day is not helpful. It is very counterintuitive when you look. It is very intuitive when you are the user, because you don't want to receive 10 notifications in a day. But it is very counterintuitive when you look at data, because every notification you send, you end up getting some value out of it. So now the goal is to understand, if you want to send 1,000 notifications, 1,000,000 notifications, or 100 notifications, what is the exact number? So that is now the debate internally. So that is the level of maturity that we've gone in. We're also looking at stopping user triggered journeys, which is, if you fall in the funnel somewhere, should I send you a notification or not? Because ultimately we've had so many automated journeys that we're now sending 10 automated journeys which are user triggered events. So maybe the user is happy with it because it's user triggered, but maybe he's not happy because there are 10 notifications that he's getting. So that's kind of the conversation right now, from a data, from a personalization perspective.
Drill a lot deeper into some of these things which you just said so casually. You said there's some 70 or 80 odd alerts that come every 4 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
Which means the number of potential error points is much larger, because not everything is going to fall all of a sudden. So you'll have I don't know, maybe a few hundred things which are being monitored, and out of which 40, 50, 70 kind of raise alerts every few hours.
But don't get looked at.
Which are not, which don't get looked at.
So what happens is, see, now we've also now started categorizing alerts into red, amber, green. And red also, how red is the alert? Is it 1 standard deviation off? Is it 5 standard deviations off? Is it 2 standard deviations off? The problem with multiple alerts is that then there is a lack of ownership that comes in. Because people get 10 alerts in a day. It's just an email in the mailbox. Which is exactly why I was going to go to the full forge, 7-8 alerts to 70-80 alerts on that journey. At what point, how did this scale out? And, because the same thing happens with segmentation, right? You go too deep, you have too many segments to now deal with. So how do you deal with them differently? Yeah. So now what happens, and what happened in 2019 was that we realized that, okay, we're probably sending too many alerts to a handful of people. Now, an alert for a week. And is an alert to the customer, or the alert internally to the team to monitor? Internally. To product teams, to marketing teams, to BI teams, to CX teams, whoever is responsible for the alert. But for a week, you are excited about the alert. For a month, you look into it. But after a month, it becomes an email, which automatically goes into some folder that you marked for the alert. Or a label under your Gmail inbox. So then what we decided was, okay, this is not helping, because now no one is looking into it, assuming that others will look into it. So then we figured out a matrix where we said that, okay, no, these are 5 people who own the alert, and these are 5 people who have oversight of the alert, so that even if the owner is not looking at someone who has an oversight is looking into it. And then there's finally the department head who is responsible for the alert. It fixed things in a lot of ways, because now everyone knew that they only have to look at 5 alerts and not all 70. So it kind of fixed that. But what happens is, as you mature as a business, you start figuring out more cohorts. More cohorts means more alerts. So then every year there is an exercise to say that, okay, now these cohorts and segmentations are not relevant anymore. So let's remove them.
Purge them.
And now let's have these 5 cohorts which are very important. So that's an activity I think which will never stop.
So do you like cap out? Okay, this is the number of things we'll look at, because if you want to add
Yeah,
5,
yeah,
remove
yeah,
5.
yeah. So we do that, and the thing is, earlier we were just a one product led company, which was Junglee Rummy. Now we've launched House At, which is a fantasy product. We've also launched poker very recently, and we keep on launching games, and if they don't work, we keep on stopping them. But so now the goal is, okay, for people who have multiple product level ownerships, how can we make life easier for them? So then you have analysts with them who are responsible for alerts now. But I think our company is so well drilled now in this routine of looking at alerts and also responding to them that it's kind of become part of the company culture that any game that launches, you have to get data pipelines ready, you have to get alerts ready even before the game is out in a way.
Sure.
So it's just become, for people who are looking at it from an outside perspective, would be like, yeah, like these are just a lot of alerts, you humanly cannot deal with them.
Sure.
But it's just become very organic in the way that we look at data now. So now alerts are a way of not even opening Tableau reports, because if you're there in the system for a long time, you look at 4 or 5 alerts and you understand the pattern completely. So it's kind of also helped us in reducing time that goes into an analysis.
You know, this seems quite obsessive in terms of the way this whole alert mechanism is ingrained into the entire broad company culture. You mentioned variety of stakeholders within the company, but do you think this is the, let's say, table stakes now across the ecosystem? Because you've seen payments, you've seen food, you've seen different industries. Is everyone equally obsessive, or is this, you know, unusual and unique to gaming?
I would say it is unusual and unique to gaming because, and again, but I could be biased because I've now worked in the industry for 5 years, and I don't know what's going on, let's say, at a Zomato or a Swiggy. But from a lot of people that we interview, it's not the case. There is a company value that we have, that we obsess with data.
But it's somewhere either top-down driven, or you've seen the revenue impact of all of this, right?
We've seen the revenue impact of all of this, because see, what would happen is, and I think from a maturity standpoint, 2018, 2016, 15, a lot of problems that would come to you as a marketeer would get solved by doing marketing interventions. But now it is not the case anymore, because now everyone solved those basic problems.
Sure.
Which is, acha chalo journey bhej de. Yeah, you've had an app showing something, or you've had flash sales, or you've had this or that, etc. Or you've had certain level of personalization, which is name, which is location, etc., etc. But now a lot of problems that come to marketing don't have a marketing only solution. So you have a solution which is BI led, we have a solution which is data led, you have a solution which is product led, you have a solution which is product marketing led.
Would you be in a position to share some examples?
So for example, let's say as an acquisition guy, I'm spending X amount of rupees to get people to download the game and then play on the platform. Now let's say my CAC is increasing. A very basic example. Now my CAC could increase because of whatever is happening before the first deposit on the platform.
So acquisition in your case is when the person makes his first money deposit.
Yes. So now it could be, okay, so what happens before that? Or what happens in the usual journey? A customer sees a banner somewhere, clicks on the banner. Now banner could be email, banner could be a GDN, banner could be push notifications from some other platforms, banners could be anything. Or a video. Customer sees the video, comes to a landing page. Pre-October 2023, we were not listed on the Play Store because of Google Play's regulations. So customer had to come to a landing page, click on the download button, get a warning saying this app might be potential harmful or something like that.
Yeah.
Then go to the settings page, press a button, then download, then open our app, see, and we are not a platform where the user can just browse. So you have to register to do anything. So the customer registers. So registers, then comes to the platform, looks at our lobby. Lobby is the first screen that you see. Clicks on play now, plays a free game, and if he wants to deposit cash, then does a deposit. So there are so many things here. Now, I need products help at every step of the funnel. If my install to reg ratio is going down, I need product and tech help. If my registration page is not behaving, if my click to registration is going down, I need product help. If my registration to first gameplay is not great, I need their help. So I need their help in everything, right from doing an A/B test to customizing to saying that, okay, now this guy is seeing a ad which is a tournament ad. So we have various game variants. So there is a cash game, which is normal games that you can play. There are tournaments that you can play. So if this guy is seeing a tournament ad, can I show a landing page which is a tournament landing page, but can I also customize the first screen in which the user sees a tournament?
Sure. And this was not the case earlier, but you discovered that this is a funnel drop-off point, so we have to fix it.
Yeah, and so it would.
So normally, when you talk about a drop in a certain ratio or whatever metric, this would have to do with either something going wrong or an evolution in your sophistication to understand that I'm able to now zoom into this problem.
Exactly. So I think the core belief that I have is that if it's not measured, it will not be improved.
Sure.
It is as simple as that. Hence the obsession with measurement, but also the obsession with just looking at data. I think this is something that I tell to every person who comes in the system who's a fresher. Like, sir, what do I need to do and what should we do? I learned by reporting. I learned by putting stuff in GDoc every day and then look at, I had 1% CTR, now I have 1.5, now I have 2, now I have 1.75, so what do I need to bring it back to 2? So I think the obsession had started at Foodpanda in a way where the 6 restaurants that would go in an emailer to say top 6 restaurants in your area would keep on changing by us saying that, okay, maybe these 6 restaurants get us the maximum orders, but these 6 restaurants get you the maximum CTR, and these 6 restaurants get you the maximum whatever top line.
Sure.
So then you keep on experimenting. It's similarly the same case here is that once you know this is your trend, there are only 2 things that you can do.
Yeah.
One, you maintain the trend, or you improve that trend.
Sure.
And if you have to improve that trend, that is where all these alerts come into play. Is that you know that, okay, if my rate of first registration to gameplay was X% and it's continuing to be X, then can I figure out a way to make it 1.1X? And if it's dropping to 0.8X, then I know I have to raise an alarm with the product and the tech teams to say that, okay, yaar, this is not working and we need to figure it out.
Let's understand the funnel first. If half the job is done, if my acquisition or the entry points for a user is something where I start looking at M1 retention.
Okay.
If I start looking at the LTVs that are projected or expected from a certain channel. So our larger approach is based on a key metric where we are evaluating each channel of acquisition on a LTV by CAC greater than 1.
That's by itself a mature practice compared to 80% of companies out there.
Yeah. So what we've done is we can very efficiently at a 7-day window or recalibrate our spends and budgets and strategies at a 7-day window. We can actually predict to a certain accuracy that whether this channel is going to break even in, let's say, a 24-month period. And if the projected LTV by CAC is something that we're not as at par, or if there are better channels, we tend to sort of toggle between different channels. So that's one, just scratching the surface.
At channel level, or would you dig, a few more layers?
Much deeper.
Way deeper, right? I would imagine. Because channel is ultimately those 4 or 5, and there's only so far that those interpretations will go.
Well, we work, if you say channel level, then there are source level. So channel would be, let's say,
I was talking about just Facebook,
paid,
Google lenses, and if those are 2 channels, then there's only so far this will tell you. But you'll go 5 levels deeper, right? The source, the medium, the whatever.
So we've worked with more than 250 channels. And today, very efficiently and with confidence, I can say that there are certain channels that have evolved to at least be at par with the Google and Facebooks of the world.
That's very fascinating. In terms of, I would have imagined this to be like a couple of spikes and then a whole bunch of long tail. But you're saying that there's a couple of additional channels that have come up to the same volume and scale as a typical
what
of Facebook.
Has over the last 2 to 3 years, what has changed is that programmatic and the advent of AI ML has really revolutionized the power of let's say from a bidding platform to actually a conversion platform or a conversion goal-based campaigns. And that has been the real pivoting point where earlier this sort of technology was leveraged by very few, and now there are a lot of other platforms that have started building towards similar capabilities.
Got it.
So,
and this is where your allocation is also increasing towards those
Yes.
platforms. It gives you better ROI
Yes.
and impact.
So one is to kind of look at it from a source and channel level and optimize for channels which tend to give at least a break-even point where it is greater than one, right?
Sure.
From my LTV perspective. Second is to, from an acquisition perspective, focus on early retention metrics. So let's say insights, and this is just basic data which
course.
helps us build journeys or let's say contest to move users towards a higher retention rate. So we figured that, let's say if within a 24-hour window, if somebody is able to play more than 5 games, there are higher chances of becoming a paying user.
Okay.
So that insight itself gives us multiple levers within product to kind of nudge a user to ensure that he's trying, or more and more users are playing at least this,
crossing
reaching
over
this milestone.
So to say, glue frequency is the term that's often used, right?
Yes.
Fair.
So, and there are multiple insights that are leveraged. So then journeys and within product journeys or contests is something that we leverage to move users from a signed up stage to a cash game player, D3 cash game player retention, then from a depositor to a D7 retention, largely resulting in a higher M1 retention metric for
It's
an
kind
end
of where
user.
you started with the whole concept of funnels.
Yeah.
You have X number of installs, you have X number of sign-ups, you have X number of the people that are activated, and then you have X number of people that, let's say, D3, D7, ultimately adding up to M1. Data can not only push campaigns, but also pull users if you know what to look for. Gaming brands run on what they call intervention strategies on the back of robust data engine to attract and retain users.
So let's say from a source level, if there is a source which is refer a friend, now to refer a friend, are you sending the same onboarding journey, push notification, SMS as an organic customer?
Sure.
So what we realize is that I need to start sending more things around, not typically what your friend is doing, but what others in the refer a friend funnel are doing.
Okay.
That helps in getting more notifications, that helps in getting more clicks, that helps in getting more conversions. From onboarding, so I think, and it is on us as marketeers, is that push notification is now, I would not say dead, because that will be a very controversial statement, but it is as good as dead, because you get 30 notifications a day, which is our fault.
The hen that
So
lays
then
golden eggs.
now you need to figure out a way to intervene when the customer is about to churn, because there is very minimal chance of the customer coming back.
Okay.
So now what we've started doing is, how do we figure out that? So one example is the churn prediction model, is that if the customer is about to churn, then can you intervene within the product at that time for the customer to not close the app? Earlier, what used to happen, if you remember, when someone used to go to the cross button on the web,
Exit intent.
you would have an exit intent, you would have a dialog box saying a promotion, etc. Now, can you, obviously not, you don't have a cross button in the app, the user can just close the app. So how do you figure out one day before or 2 days before the customer is about to churn, can you send them more personalized, relevant content
On the app itself during the session?
Yes,
Okay.
so that the person does not churn in the first place. I think reactivating dormant customers is very hard, two, very expensive.
So prevent rather than
Just prevent rather than better be safe than sorry.
Sure.
So I think.
But this would need a lot of sophistication in terms of the modeling and churn prediction itself, and then there are variations on how to prevent this guy to churn from churning vis-a-vis this guy from churning.
Yeah.
They'll have different reasons.
So then you have to see, for someone who does not have a sophisticated. So I'll tell you how our model also evolved. Is that now we have a data science team who can tell you that, okay, this is with this probability, this person is going to churn, and you do this. But when we didn't have a data science team, you could always look at 5-6 major key indicators to say कि अगर ये होगा इसकी life में. So for example, if someone started out with 1,000 rupees today and is now at 10 rupees and has just lost 7 games straight, that person will not play her. If someone is a new customer, has played 5 games, lost 4, won 4, lost 1, you know which one will retain, right? So then you have to ensure that you don't over spam the person who's won 4 games, and you don't overspam, or if you overspam the customer who's lost 4 games, then what do you do? So then what we did was कि यार अच्छा, there is no point in sending a bonus code to someone who's lost 4 games. वो क्या करेगा? You, like, that person will feel you're still fleecing him or her out of money. So we created something called a rummy score. So we went, there's a series of 15, 20 4-minute videos with Annu Kapoor. Annu Kapoor is a very avid rummy player.
Sure.
So he put in a lot of love and effort into it, where then what we started saying was, okay, if you've lost some games, here is a video of rummy score, which will help you to play better. So there is no point saying ki yaar, get 100% off on your next transaction, because the customer will not make the next transaction. So how can you have more how-to videos? How can you? So we started making people learn how to play rummy.
But sorry, so this is the guy who came in, lost 4 games maybe,
and then you intervene within the product. Yeah, you intervene within.
The moment he's lost 4 games, he'll say, "Hey, Ankur will teach
so
you
now,
rummy."
So then we experimented saying that, okay, if he's lost 2 games, first 2 games, what is there? So what is the correlation between the games lost on day 1 to D7, D30, D90 retention? Once you understand the final number, that is where. So once you've now understood, okay, this is my data, then what do you do with segmentation? Then what do you do with content?
Sure.
So we realized कि यार हम segment भी अच्छा कर रहे हैं, and we are obviously doing a good work at correlating this with long-term retention. But then our intervention is wrong. So now let's correct the intervention. That then was an exercise with the brand team. Got this, etc., etc. No, so intervention, I mean from not the time of intervention, but purely from the content that you're sending.
Sure.
So then we created this rummy scoop to say कि अच्छा अब ये करो, ये करो, ये करो.
But if I were to zoom into the biggest problem you had to solve in this whole retention play, you know, in traditional businesses, it's the first transaction or the second transaction kind of window in some sense.
Yeah.
In your case, it might have to do with activation as part one of the topic, and then the moment I've loaded money, now what happens? If I've loaded money, I'm going to play any which ways.
Not everyone plays.
Yeah.
So now there would be KPIs which were getting tracked. कि अच्छा, how many people are loading money but not playing? How many people are playing 5 games and not playing? How many people are playing game on day 1 but not playing a game on day 7?
So what are the biggest, let's say, delta points in your scenario that you found which have the biggest impact on the overall business?
Which is people losing. Simple.
People losing games.
People losing games is the biggest. Is the biggest factor of people not
coming back.
Right? Because eventually you want to win in any game that you play. So even if you lose Candy Crush 10 times, you will not play, irrespective of how good the app is.
So you have to just make it hard enough for them to enjoy it, but
is what Candy Crush did, right?
It's a real money people to people game. Some people will lose. That's
so
the nature.
See, Candy Crush can do changes in their algo. We cannot do that.
Exactly.
So you're relying on. So then, can you match people properly? Right? Can you have sophistication around your game match algorithms?
So are you saying that I would definitely lose with these 3 people, but if you put me in front of this guy, I'll likely win. So I'm better off.
No. So we cannot even do that.
You can't.
What we can. See, because you're playing your first game, I have no way of predicting your behavior. So then I have to rely on a model which says कि अच्छा यार ये बंदा शायद ये 3-4 click करता है, etc. And that is how you realize the skill level of. But again, if you don't have any data, then you have to match people who come on the same day with each other.
So there could be a whole lot of hacking in some sense, but I don't know to what level.
But we cannot do that, right? Eventually, if we have to maintain impartiality and randomness in the game, we cannot do anything to influence your outcome. Right? So,
but that's the stance you're taking, that you want to remain impartial because Candy Crush.
No, we have to, right? Because we are a real money game. So for me to not do anything which is not in the law or illegal or morally not correct, I cannot, because then you lose the trust of the customer.
Yeah.
So you have to be completely impartial. Only when you start seeing कि यार अच्छा, now this is the behavior of the customer, is when you start doing these interventions कि यार सीख ले, don't play. So like we also encourage people to not to play. So if you watched a TV series for 8 hours, you don't get a notification कि भाई मत देखो, सो जा, कल ऑफिस जाना है. But we then also do this within the so for example, this could be a good example to avoid churn. If now you played for 4 hours, 8 hours, you're obviously playing with real money, so you're losing, you're winning, etc. So we would proactively intervene within the product to say you played for XYZ hours, we advise you to not to play today, or we advise you to not to play for the next 7 days. We've also given customers the flexibility of choosing their deposit limits. कि अच्छा, if you don't have control over your impulsive behavior, then here is a feature within the app where you say you will not let me deposit more than 1,000 rupees. So that's a way
trust building in some sense.
So that's a way of now retaining the customer for 5 years rather than letting them spend all they can and then losing them in 2 years or 1 year.
Short-term versus long-term thinking, where you're choosing the long-term path of building the long-term trust and relationship, so to speak.
Yes. So that's one. But again, all of this just helps in retention, right?
Yeah, but that's also at a philosophical level a mature way of looking at life, because you're letting go of the short-term spike you might have gotten in deposits by capping it out.
Yeah. But then eventually, if you look at from a D30, D90 level, things work out.
So largely it plays into our segmentation portfolio where basis certain behavior, the model can actually predict that the user is going to churn in the next 7 days or odd days. And then multiple journeys are triggered. Right. One is obviously the Marcom piece of it. Second is the offer panel.
Offer panel is the real estate in the application itself?
Yes. There are certain coupons that get activated. Third is a more investigative journey, which looks into whether the user has any experience issues, or is it related to certain tickets that are open, or addressal to any grievance that he might have had.
Sure.
Multiple things get triggered, and that is largely happening at the back of the model studying into multiple variables like his P&L, frequency, buying behavior is changing, the number of times that he's playing on the application is reducing, the number of game player days. This is a very critical metric for any gaming company. If that is kind of dropping, then his previous behavior. And it reads into multiple variables and tend to give an output or a prediction.
How much of this would happen like in real time? So if I've opened the app and I have, let's say, whatever context that your system already knows, I'll be able to serve me a different, and you said the offer space is already getting customized basis my history with it. But during my session, if I made these 3 clicks instead of these 3 clicks, would something change?
So some bit of it is real time.
No, of course, it can't be 100%.
Yeah, the recommendation, the table recommendation is something that is reading into the previous game behavior. Second is the kind of communication or offers that are available for him. But that's largely the application as of now.
Sure. Very interesting lenses in terms of how gaming industry can be responsible at the same time actually grab market share on a very Bharat habit of Ludo. And at this point, it looks like Ludo is going to be the mainstay for some time to come, because there's enough more people who need to learn to play Ludo online and discover the fun of playing with somebody they can, perhaps see as a name and a face. Yeah, and that's where your winning story lies.
So we still believe, and I mean, there is a large addressable market out there that is Ludo. We also have other games like Snakes and Ladders. We have a few games on cricket, but largely being a super app. But we want to stand for Ludo, and that's the market.
That's where your marketing efforts also lie. Yeah. But in terms of just the cross-pollination bit of it, is that an aggressive or an important track at the moment that people who have come in for Ludo should also play other things, or is this something that will have independent discovery paths?
So cross-promotion is something that we keep dabbling with. Again, that playbook is something that is maturing over time. You also have to understand that time spent on Ludo versus time spent on other game could result in a very different revenue per user. So it's a very sensitive migration.
If it has to be made.
Chapter 6. Individualization. The saying, think global, act local, extends to retention marketers as well. Because gamers come from different geographies, demographics, and psychographics, they can't be targeted with a cookie-cutter approach. They must be engaged one-on-one in a way that contextualizes and localizes the content. That helps increase retainability and relatability.
From a communication standpoint, as I said, you've segmented people, but then what is the tone of communication that you have? That is very important. Not everyone can send cool notifications. So what we realize is that you have to send notifications which have like grade 5 English level, which are at a very basic level that everyone understands, because our player is a 45, 50-year-old, our players are a 18-year-old, 21-year-old. So your language has to be universal in a way. It cannot be very niche. That is what we realize after multiple levels of experimentation.
Which is where GOT kind of stuff can't go to people.
Yeah. So you have to be very basic in what you say. You have to be I think what we've realized when it comes to communication level intervention is that the easier you keep your creative and you don't have metaphors, similes, etc. in it, the easier you are able to communicate what you want to as a brand. That is what works for us.
No, but help me understand this something, Bharat. In terms of the content and the communication, now at Foodpanda, we've seen a lot of value in heavily personalizing it, right?
Yes.
So I know your neighborhood, I know that your preferred cuisine, I know the top 6 restaurants in that area. I'll probably use the name of that restaurant in the message content itself. So the creative part of the copy was like, the opening letter and the closing word, probably. But what you seem to be describing is the entire message, maybe a push notification, maybe a WhatsApp or an SMS, is a piece of copy somebody's written with some segment in mind.
Yes.
But is there a meaningful play with personalization, or do you think that's not as central to your communication play yet?
So what happens is that if the personalization could be the kind of game that you are playing.
Sure.
Within Rummy. So within Rummy, there are game variants. There are tournaments. There could be free tournaments. There could be cash tournaments. So that is the level of then that is what comes in when it comes to personalization. Is that then I send you a notification not for a variant that you are playing. I send you a notification for the tournament that you are entering, and how are some ways to win this tournament, or how are some ways to do better in this tournament.
So the approach to this would be in one way you create X number of segments, and for each segment you create a certain copy which goes out and which might have a couple of variables here and there.
Yes.
And the other approach is where you actually take a slightly largish kind of segment and your entire content plays a bunch of variables coming together.
So then again the thing around then what happens is then you have a push notification goes to the entire base, or to 70-80% of the base, which is deposit code of the day or bonus of the day, promotion of the day. And then you have these other notifications that are more user triggered, which is a funnel drop, which is you've clicked on some button in the app, which is an event for me.
Sure.
So then I send you something regarding that.
And that content would have the context of what you've clicked and all of that. And that's where the variables get involved.
The goal for us as a company would be, how do I reduce my dependence on the one bonus code promotion, whatever of the day? How does that become 20-30% of my overall promotions? And how does this automation become 70-80% of my overall promotions?
So automation is by design somewhat personalized.
It then automatically becomes personalized.
It gravitates towards that.
Because then the user is doing something to get that notification, and not me figuring out that this is my calendar of the month and then I have to send this.
Fair enough. So in fact, something pretty similar we try to do in the fashion ecosystem, where you had a whole bunch of algorithm-driven communications going out. In fact, Netflix even today does everything algorithm-driven. Whatever new releases have to happen, they don't have like a calendar that, okay, everybody would get everything every day.
You would only get it if you've seen that season.
That series, some sort of
some genre
preference towards that, right? So I would imagine the algo-driven world ends up being the sophisticated answer to it. In your case, you're saying that there is, let's say, X percentage which is algo-driven, and there is Y percentage which is the calendar-driven approach.
Yes.
And you're very clear that you want to keep moving away from the calendar-driven approach as a share of your communication.
Yes.
And that's where you're headed.
Yeah, because then automatically it gives you more conversions, it gives you more CTRs purely from a number standpoint. From a user delight standpoint, they also know कि यार अच्छा ये भेजा है, which means they care about me.
Really? How do you say that?
Because we've talked to people and they said, when I've lost a tournament, you've sent me something like this, which helped me.
You know, what's ironic for me is, while of course, it's the same companies we all talk about, the food leaders in the ecosystem, all that they do is basically very witty copies. And they get pretty
So no one has done what we did at Foodpanda.
Which is what amazes me, that is the number-driven impact not obvious enough for them to be considering this? In your case, you're saying you've seen the delta on conversion fronts, right?
Yes, because it's also very logical, right? It is something that I am telling you.
Too, but it doesn't seem like it's common knowledge.
Yeah, I am telling you that I want to buy a shoe. I don't want to buy a shirt. So,
besides, you want a shirt, I want a jacket. Why would both of us just get the same message?
Yeah. But I think everyone goes through that journey of figuring out what works and what does not, because essentially all of us love defining 15 attributes to one customer. Ki I like a blue shirt which is from X brand, which is in this price range, which goes well with black jeans, which you will wear on this occasion, and 10 other things, right?
So first is to find the right product for the market fit. So Ludo is the primary and the largest game which is very native to Indian culture itself. That gives us a large enough TAM to kind of address to. Then if I were to look at from a new user lens, tier 2 and tier 3 markets because of, let's say, affordable devices, internet penetration, and let's say mobile literacy, kind of unlocks a lot of potential market in tier 2 and tier 3,
Right.
typically my Bharat audience. And third, language or going hyper local from product as well as com perspective, it's very critical. So we are dabbling. There is an option of Hindi as well as English, and we've seen from a com perspective that if users who selected Hindi as their preferred platform language tend to respond better with Hindi as their
Sure.
comms language.
Yeah.
And we've seen a stark difference in the CTRs on any communication that we send out to them.
Interesting.
Over and above that, going more regional on product side is something that we've explored earlier. Still, the playbook
language
is
or beyond that?
largely on the language, or let's say the game itself.
Sure.
But I think the playbook is still at a nascent stage
Clearly.
in terms of
You have enough room to grow without having to go
Yes,
that
as of
far with it.
Even if gaming brands are growing big on retention by the day, they are planning in years. Here's how Bharat and Nishant predict their respective retention roadmap in the near future.
Yeah, when I came in, I had a very clear mandate that okay, this is one vertical that I have to start with, and for the first 6 months, just go very heavy in it, go very deep in it, and solve all the problems that there
This
are.
is retention you're talking about.
This was acquisition back in the day
Acquisition.
because we had to grow.
Sure.
And then even though I was the VP of marketing and had to look at everything, the company thankfully understood that yaar, you cannot give someone everything in the first 6 months because I was bound. So everyone who comes in gets overwhelmed because
Sure.
just the amount of data that we look
Yeah.
at. I got overwhelmed after 3 months. I like, dude, कहाँ आ गया हूँ मैं? Like, कौन सी problem देखूँ? Like I had a problem in prioritization because there were so many problems within marketing. And then thankfully I got enough time to move from acquisition to retention, brand, etc., that it took me a good 1 year to get the entire scope of it. But then when I had that, then I started talking to product, then I started talking to tech, etc. Now what I would change is that maybe go deeper into a module and then start talking to all stakeholders. And not just look at the marketing side of acquisition and then move to the marketing side of retention, then move to the marketing side of brand. But just when you're doing acquisition, talk to enough people because it just helps you to get to solutions quicker or get to the problem statement easier. I think a lot of times you also take time in figuring out the problem statement in itself because you have 10 alerts and you have so many things intersecting with each other. You don't know कि यार problem थी क्या.
You know what's also very interesting is when you started out and when you said this, you were overwhelmed. It was to do with the fact that there's all of this data infra already in place and there's all of these alerts already coming in.
Yes. So now what
And
do you do?
Somebody who's starting, let's say, one level before this would end up having to do all of this to begin with, right? And
Yeah.
that might itself be a big task because you have to have top level alignment to make sure that you invest all this time and effort and bandwidth in establishing this data infrastructure.
So that I think
In your case, you were lucky to have it on day zero.
yes. Credit to Kapil, who's the president of the company and the co-founder. I think he's been very instrumental in driving that culture of looking at data very
Sure.
seriously within the company. So again, I didn't have to push a lot of people
Yeah.
doing that, but I had to push a lot of people in marketing to do that. कि यार देखो, मतलब
This
it is not
would
just
have to do with because this is a new team that you've built and they come from different contexts.
yes,
where
it's
they're
a
not as
new
obsessed.
team. 2018, not everyone was looking at data.
Yeah.
To be very honest.
So even today they're not necessarily, but sure.
Yeah. So that's like you had to culturally align people to say that okay, yaar, now. So now the beauty in our company what is that even if the CEO is asking you to do things, someone who's 5 layers below would send an email saying यार ये तो data ही नहीं बोल रहा यार ये तो सही नहीं है. So why is the CEO saying that? He or she might not directly talk to the CEO, but he'll definitely talk to people who are 2 level or 3 levels above and say कि यार and start a conversation.
Which is
And
a great
not
thing to have.
which
no?
is a great thing to have.
So one is that level of data visibility to that guy. So CXO -5 level people also have that kind of visibility to say that okay, this is my analysis.
Because there is Tableau which is
Yeah.
available to everyone. So it's also again it's a journey where which has led us to be where we are when it comes to the maturity that we have. I think one thing which I'll not shy away from saying is that we are very mature when it comes to data practices.
Sure.
We might not be mature when it comes to a lot of other things, But just when it comes to data practices, I think we are decent.
Somewhere or the other, I mean, like you said, it's come top down from Kapil, so obviously that helps matters.
It helps in a way, but see, aligning everyone to that vision is very, very, very difficult. But because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard
It's
to look
hard
at
work,
numbers.
obviously.
It's hard to look at it repeatedly every day, etc., etc. So it's hard work.
And it's potentially boring after a point because, like you said, all those alerts will go to some inbox somewhere, and
Yeah.
you'll start not.
It
really
is
paying
not the
attention.
exciting work when you sign up for marketing or product. It is
You know,
not
fun
the
fact, you're talking
exciting
about
part
from
to
a gaming company. And I mean, one would imagine a life in a gaming company to be quite exciting on an everyday basis. And what you're describing is, I mean, of course, it's exciting for somebody who's as obsessed with data, but otherwise, this might sound pretty boring to a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. Matlab, to be very honest, it is. But it's just that you have to, once you internalize it, is that this is the right thing to do. I think it just makes your journey and your point of view or your vision, it just everything falls into place. When you say that nahi, this is the right thing to do long term, now everyone, then you understand that there is value in doing this. And now I think 5 meetings out of 10 or 6 meetings out of 10 are just purely around data and numbers. There are only 4 meetings which is around अच्छा communication क्या होनी चाहिए, brand क्या बोल रहा है, color कौन सा होना चाहिए, which is like the more exciting part of marketing. But then now 6-7 out of 10 meetings are just around this. ये cohort down हो गया. What people don't realize in marketing is that a lot of grunt work is just on Excel, on numbers, etc. So when you sign up, now the ask from the brand team and the social teams of the world is also to look at numbers.
Yeah.
The ask from a business finance team is also to look at acquisition. The ask from us is also to look at tech. So it just become, I think market has evolved in a way where if you don't evolve, then you become a dinosaur.
ROAS and typically revenue campaigns have a certain threshold because it's leveraging certain intelligence that is already there with the channel level, right? Whether it is the AI ML learning or the campaign learning. So though they are high yielding channels, but it has certain threshold because it's limited by the number of users that are out there. If you were to sort of set up campaigns and acquire newer user or get the fence sitters in the funnel, you have to set up campaigns at the top of the funnel. That's where you generate more users. So somebody who is likely to play Ludo versus somebody who is a Ludo player versus somebody who is a RMG Ludo player. That's the difference.
In some sense, it's a market share grab versus, let's say, category creation.
Early adopters versus, let's say, laggers to maybe...
I mean, after all of these games, investing all this time and effort in getting people to play Ludo, if some people are still yet to play their first game of Ludo online, it's where the top of the funnel would come from. So, we spoke about the whole idea of optimizing acquisition while keeping retention in mind. And now there's a bunch of lenses to apply on how to solve for retention effectively. Within the customer journey, within a particular game, there's a bunch of these things that can happen well versus not well versus poorly to kind of make sure he's coming back and M1 is solved for. Let's just double click a little bit on when you have these happy flows that M1 is great, but there's a percentage of users which is not coming back. What are the set of things that happen in your world to make sure this number looks better?
So if I were to divide my retention efforts broadly basis users, one is a new user effort, which kind of moves to the M1 needle.
Right.
Second is and most critical is the power user cohort, which tend to kind of deliver more than 65 to 70% of the overall revenue that gets generated. And then third bunch is the month-on-month retention. So somebody who's playing last month, how many of them would continue to play the next month? If I were to break it, then it could be D3, D7 because within gaming or as compared to other categories like a e-commerce or a fintech, the repeat rate is much higher, the frequency, the number of active days. Right? And that's what we're trying to largely achieve.
I mean, you're competing for attention share from a Netflix or whatever, you'd rather play a game.
Correct. So when it comes to, let's say, a month-over-month retention or a power user cohort, the kind of gameplay changes. So for example, we focus a lot on experience. So what we've largely built is a recommendation engine that kind of bases a lot of game behavior, previous win rate, the preferred table. We kind of recommend the best suited table for the player. Then there is automation in terms of addressing any sort of bad experiences within the game. So let's say if you're in a poor network area and there is any sort of glitch that happens, we have certain rules where we can kind of automatically see that if somebody was in a leading position and he abandoned the game, that immediately raises a flag that okay, there could be certain reasons why he abandoned, and then basis certain rules that query is escalated, and if it is a network issue or a game glitch, there is an instant refund that
This is automated for you.
this is automated.
Okay.
And this has actually helped bring down about 40% on refund tickets that we used to get. And obviously there are certain cases which requires better visibility.
Is there a larger,
those
let's
are
say, play to
escalated.
this in some sense? No. So of course there's going to be some, let's say, leftover stuff that will get escalated, but this whole fact that this is automatically done does increase the consumer confidence as
Yes,
well. And
a lot,
You
because-
watch that as a pattern that okay, people who've gotten one refund are slightly more, let's say, trusting of the platform.
So the churn prediction model actually indicated that users with a ticket being open on refund or any sort of game glitch had a higher tendency to churn, and that's understandable. And that's where the efforts towards creating an automation module to address this was key priority, and we've actually seen
Fair enough,
results.
and you can very clearly see that delta coming, right? So in some sense, proactive customer service, even if it might seem, let's say, tactically a little expensive because you're returning all that money, but in the larger scheme of things, it's just paying off very well.
Yeah, and for power users, I think, I can actually quote this, that our retention rate would be more than 90% month on month.
Month on month.
Yes, and that's where a lot of focus, whether it is through journeys or figuring out the best sort of in-game experience for these users, because this sort of bunch contributes to the
societal
more than
charm.
70%.
How do you enter the power user cohort? What behavior do you have to demonstrate to get in there?
The consistency of the game. Inherently, power users do tend to uninstall and install a lot, because it is a lot to do with, let's say, your win rate or your PNL, most recent PNL.
At
that
an
a user could
individual
recall.
level.
Yeah. But largely dependent, you enter a power user cohort basis a certain size of the game, the frequency of the game, and the revenue that you generate.
So in some sense, if I've demonstrated, at how early do you know that I'm showing signs of being potentially a power user? There's new power users getting added.
We
every
have
month,
that prediction modeling built,
Right.
but to replicate that on acquisition channels has been something that we're dabbling with.
Sure.
We can predict with a lot of accuracy to the potential power user base, but to recreate or acquire them through a certain channel mix is something that we get to figure.
With that, we've come to the end of this crossover episode of the Status Retention Marketing Podcast. If you have thoughts and opinions on this episode, write to us at soraPodcast@WebEngage.com with any questions, ideas, and topics that you think we should cover next. Before you go, subscribe to the podcast so you never miss the latest drops. This is your host, Ankur Gattani, signing off.